Have you ever tried to heal someone who seemed to always be running away from themselves? Have you ever loved so much that you tried to be a shelter, a mirror, a lap, all at the same time? But no matter how much you gave, everything seemed to slip through your fingers like sand. Maybe you believed that love heals all, that with patience this person would see the light, that with time they would realize how much you were there, whole for them. But what if I told you that you cannot heal someone who still runs away from their own soul? Rumi said, "You were born with wings. Why do you still crawl through life?" But maybe, without realizing it, you've left your wings aside, just to try to carry someone who refuses to walk. And this is one of the most silent pains there is, loving someone who hasn't chosen to find themselves yet. Do you feel it? This pain that no one sees, of giving so much and not being seen, to insist on someone who is emotionally absent, of trying to heal a heart that hasn't even decided to bleed yet. This is where it all begins, in the place where your soul is confused between love and salvation. Because yes, there are people we love, but who are not yet ready to love themselves. People who run away from their own mirror, from silence, from the light that Rumi said was the gateway to healing. People who still hide behind masks, distractions, walls, because facing pain requires courage, and the courage to heal doesn't always come in its own time. But why do we insist so much on saving those who don't want to be saved? Why does the heart try so hard to be a bridge for someone who still chooses to escape? It's because there is something in you that is also still seeking to find itself. The truth is that sometimes trying to heal others is just a reflection of our own wound. From that ancient pain that taught us that to be loved we needed to fix, care for, save. Only, you are not the healer of the world. You are the soul that also needs to be seen. You are the one who carries the light, but you need to learn to light your own path before you can light someone else's. And I know, it's hard to let go. It's hard to accept that someone you love may not be ready, but even harder is to keep insisting and breaking yourself in the process. Do you feel like you've tried everything? That even providing love, care, presence, is it still not enough? Maybe the problem isn't you. Maybe it's trying to offer healing to those who still refuse to look at their own wounds. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. But if the person still runs away from the wound, he runs away from his own light." This video isn't just about the other person. It's about you, about the soul that tires of tempting, about the heart that screams silently, "When will it be my turn?" If you've ever felt this way, if you've ever loved someone who left you in the dark while you ran away from your own reflection, stay here. In the next few minutes, you will discover the invisible root of this pain, and maybe, for the first time, I can let go, without guilt, because true healing does not begin with the other. She starts in you. Before continuing, take a deep breath. This is not just another video. This here is a mirror. Every word you hear is meant to touch where no one else can reach. So, if something here speaks to your soul, he comments. Not just because of engagement, but because by writing, you materialize your healing. Say, "I release those who still run away from themselves." And notice the weight that lifts from your chest when you consciously decide this. And if this content makes sense to you, leave your like. It's not just a gesture. It's your way of saying, "I need more of this. I want to continue this journey." Subscribe to the channel, because here, each video is a letter you didn't know you needed to read. And you are not alone anymore. This space was made for souls who feel too much, for hearts that are still learning to let go without getting lost. Let's go together until the end. And now, let's dive deeper, because what hurts is not the end. It's about continuing to try to heal someone who hasn't even started to look in the mirror. Have you ever wondered why you keep trying to reach someone who always slips through your fingers? Why do you insist on giving so much to a soul that always seems distant, always closed off, always running away? Maybe you're in a relationship with someone who isn't ready yet, someone who doesn't yet have the courage to look within. And that hurts. It hurts because you feel like you gave your best. You gave presence. You gave love. You gave patience. You gave advice, listening, time, and faith. You even gave parts of yourself you didn't even know existed, and yet all you received in return was silence, indifference, distance, or that absence disguised as presence, when the person is right by your side, but their soul seems miles away. There's an invisible pain that almost no one has the courage to talk about. The pain of trying to heal someone who's still running away from their own truth. Someone who, no matter how much they say they want to be loved, in practice sabotages themselves constantly. You realize this person is afraid to surrender, afraid to trust, afraid to show vulnerability. And perhaps this fear stems from old wounds. Perhaps it stems from traumas they've never had the courage to face. But even understanding this, you feel like you're losing yourself in the process. Because while you try to heal the other, you're emptying yourself. You adapt, mold, and erase yourself. And in the end, the one who gets hurt the most is you. And therein lies the invisible problem. You've become accustomed to confusing love with salvation. You've confused affection with a mission. And you've believed, without realizing it, that it was your responsibility to fix someone who hasn't even begun to rebuild themselves. This happens because there's an unresolved wound inside you. A part of you that believes that if you're enough, you'll finally be loved. That if you can save the other person, you'll prove your worth. And this isn't selfishness. It's neediness. It's an emptiness that stems from ancient times. The emptiness of not being heard, of not being seen, of having learned that to be loved, you had to deserve it. And now, without even realizing it, you attract people who only confirm this pattern. Emotionally unavailable people. People who run away. People who don't prioritize you. People who aren't ready. Rumi said, "Don't look outside for what can only be healed inside." And maybe that's the key you haven't turned yet. You're not here to patch up someone else's soul. You're here to recognize your own soul. To stop chasing after someone who won't even run for themselves. And it's hard to accept that. It's painful to admit that the other person may never be ready. But it's even more painful to keep insisting and hurting yourself in the process. Because when you dedicate yourself to someone who's still running away from themselves, no matter how much you do, it will never be enough. Not because you're not enough, but because they still can't receive. It's like trying to offer light to someone who still prefers to remain in the darkness, and you feel deep down that you're repeating a cycle, a pattern. You enter relationships where you give too much and receive too little, where you expect too much and are forgotten, where you love intensely and are left in silence. And this erodes your self-esteem. It makes you doubt who you are. It makes you think there's something wrong with you. But there isn't. What exists is an emotional confusion that has made you believe that love has to hurt, that love is sacrifice, that love is insistence, when in fact, true love begins when you choose yourself. This is where many people get lost, trying to heal others when what they really need is to embrace themselves, to look within, to stop running away from themselves. Because deep down, what hurts most isn't the other person not changing. It's that you keep forgetting yourself while you wait. And it's in this waiting that you become paralyzed. You wait for an apology. You wait for recognition. You wait for a gesture. You wait for that person to one day look at you and say, "I see what you did for me." But that day may never come. And that's okay. Because your healing can't depend on someone who's still at war with themselves. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters." But if someone still closes that wound with fear, if they still ignore it, if they still refuse to feel, no matter how hard you try, it won't work. And you can't carry that guilt anymore. You can't punish yourself for not being able to save someone, because deep down no one saves anyone. Salvation is a personal choice. And until that choice is made by the other person, you'll only hurt yourself by trying to do the impossible. You are not responsible for anyone's healing, but you are fully responsible for stopping putting yourself in situations where your light is diminished, where your soul is ignored, where your love is treated as excess. It's time to stop trying to be the sun for those who still insist on living in the dark, to stop trying to give color to those who still choose to live in black and white, because your energy is sacred, your presence is valuable, and your love needs to be delivered where there is space to receive it, not where there are walls to reject it. If you've come this far and feel like these words touched something inside you, write in the comments, "I release the weight that is not mine." This way, you not only record your decision, but you also help others understand that they are not alone in this silent process of liberation. And remember, this is just the beginning. There is still much to reveal about what truly holds you back in this cycle. There's a deeper root behind the pain of trying to heal someone who still runs away from themselves. This pain isn't just in the other person's absence. in the silence that hurts, in the indifference that corrodes. It often stems from an even more invisible place, your hope, from that part of you that still believes that if you love enough, if you endure enough, if you wait patiently, this person will awaken. They will look at themselves. They will choose to stay. But what happens when that doesn't come? When day after day you realize you're wearing yourself down for someone who keeps running away, not just from you, but from themselves? Because those who don't want to look at themselves also can't truly look at others. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." And that phrase seems cruel at first glance, but it's a profound spiritual truth. The heart only truly opens when it's shattered by its own illusions. And perhaps the greatest illusion you carry is that your love can awaken someone who hasn't yet begun their own journey. But no one awakens in another's time. No one chooses healing while still committed to escape. And herein lies the spiritual root of this painful dynamic. You persist because you believe your love has the power to transform the other. And that may even be true. But only when the other decides to find themselves, when they decide to face their shadows, when they decide to stop running from themselves. Those who run away from themselves move away from true love. And not because they don't desire love, but because love demands presence. It demands truth. It demands the courage to be vulnerable. And there are many people who say they want love, but in practice they are still so wounded, so lost, so disconnected from their own soul, that they can't surrender. They don't run away from you. They run away from what you awaken in them. Because your presence, your surrender, your silent love, all of this reflects what they can't offer in return. You awaken a light that disturbs, because it illuminates parts they don't yet know how to handle. And then instead of acknowledging this, they pull away. They shut down, they make excuses, they become absent, and you blame yourself. You think you did something wrong. You think you weren't enough. But the spiritual truth is that you simply appeared in their lives before they were ready to be seen. And what to do about this? Understand that love isn't about saving. It's about mutual presence. It's about exchange. It's about encounter. And you can't find someone who's still on the run. When you try to force this connection, what happens is that you end up losing yourself too. Because little by little, you stop looking at your own pain, your own emptiness, and start living for the other person's pain. You start waiting, begging in silence, justifying absences, tolerating crumbs. And all of this fuels a cycle of silent suffering, where you believe you're loving, but in reality, you're nullifying yourself. The spiritual root of this pattern is ancient. It may be linked to your childhood, to emotional wounds you've carried for years. Perhaps you learned from an early age that to be loved you had to deserve it, that you had to care for others to be seen, that you would only be valuable if you were needed. And now, without even realizing it, you repeat this script. You enter relationships where you're always the savior, the one who understands, the one who endures, the one who waits, but almost never the one who receives, the one who is welcomed, the one who is truly seen. And this hurts. It hurts because this is not your mission. You didn't come into this world to be the foundation for those who are still falling apart. You came to live, to feel, to be loved with truth, with presence, with reciprocity. Rumi also said, "Don't settle for stories of how things happened to others. Awaken your own legend." This means you need to stop living your life trying to fit into the emotional story of someone who hasn't yet written their own. It's time to write your own, to stop breaking yourself trying to put back together the pieces of those who still refuse to look at their own broken pieces, to recognize that true love begins with inner presence with yourself, with your acceptance, with your courage to say, "I will no longer run away from myself trying to find the other." This is a profound spiritual process. It's not just about understanding with your mind. It's about feeling with your soul. It's about recognizing that you were also running away, subtly, by insisting on those who aren't ready. Because while you insist, you avoid looking at your own emptiness. But now, something in you is changing. You're beginning to realize that this pain has a purpose, that this rejection hides a revelation, that this absence offered by the other is actually calling you to turn inward, to rediscover yourself, to look at yourself, because it is there, in the silence that once hurt, that healing begins to whisper. And yes, maybe it still hurts, but not like before. Now this pain is no longer despair, it's understanding, it's awareness, It's the pain of awakening, the pain of opening your eyes to a new spiritual reality, where you no longer need to beg for presence, where you no longer need to justify absences, where you finally understand that those who run away from themselves can never offer you what you seek. If this part of the video spoke to you, write in the comments, "I find myself again in my own presence." This phrase isn't just a phrase, it's a ritual. It's your soul telling you it's ready to return home, and we still have further to go, because this journey, though difficult, is just beginning. Are you ready for the next step? You're not here to patch up anyone's soul. No one told you this because from an early age, you were taught to believe that loving meant self-effacement, that being strong meant enduring the unbearable, that being good enough wasn't really about being yourself but rather what the other person needed. And so, you grew up trying to glue together pieces of others, even when your own were falling apart. You tried to maintain broken bonds even when the price was breaking yourself. You tried to save those who wouldn't even admit they were sinking. And this became so common, so repetitive, that you started to think it was love. But true love doesn't ask you to bleed every day. True love doesn't require you to extinguish your own light, to sustain the flame of someone who constantly extinguishes everything around them. True healing doesn't begin when the other person changes. It begins when you stop chasing and start walking with your own pain. And that changes everything. Because until now, perhaps you've lived trapped in a silent cycle of hope mixed with suffering. That hope that, if you wait just a little longer, that person will realize everything you've done. They'll change. They'll come back. They'll heal. They'll thank you. But this hope is an illusion disguised as faith, because those who still run away from themselves don't see how much you're giving. And more than that, often they don't even want to see, because seeing requires responsibility. And the responsibility of seeing another person's pain is something only those who have had the courage to look at their own can have. Have you ever noticed that the more you insist, the more this person withdraws? That the closer you get with affection, care, and dedication, the more they seem to become cold, absent, and distant? This happens because your presence arouses discomfort. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your dedication exposes what they can't yet offer. And when the other person feels too exposed, they run away. They make excuses. They sabotage the connection. They cut ties. They push you away. And instead of acknowledging that the problem lies with them, they shift the blame. They make you feel needy, exaggerated, dramatic, and overly intense. And deep down, all of this is an unconscious attempt to avoid looking at their own absence. Because being in the presence of someone you love deeply requires maturity. It requires presence. It requires soul. And those who still live running from their own soul can't bear to be seen so clearly. The hidden key is to realize this. It's to step out of the savior mindset and into the consciousness of the deserving. You're not here to prove your worth to anyone. You're not here to beg for love, affection, or presence. You're not here to live in the shadow of relationships that drain you, hurt you, and make you doubt who you are. You're here to live whole. And living whole sometimes means walking away from those who only offer you halves, from those who can't truly be present, from those who don't walk beside you, but simply watch you waste away. This key reveals itself when you stop asking yourself what else you can do to be seen, and start asking yourself why you still accept being ignored, why you're still trying to prove you're enough, why you're still giving so much to someone who offers so little. And the answer often lies in an old pain, which taught you that love was synonymous with effort, that only those who sacrifice receive love, that only those who endure everything are worthy. But that's not love. That's emotional conditioning, and freeing yourself from it is the beginning of true healing. Walking with your pain means acknowledging its existence without trying to hide it behind fighting for someone else. It means looking at your wounds without emotional makeup, without justifications, without fantasies. It means admitting that it hurts, that it wounds, that it destroys. But it also means admitting that you're ready to no longer depend on someone else's change to begin your own. Because while you wait for someone else to transform, your life is on hold. Your soul is stuck. Your cycles are suspended. And the only thing that grows is the anguish of watching time pass without real transformation. But now, you can choose differently. You can choose to walk, step by step, unhurriedly, but with awareness, with lucidity, with soul. Because healing isn't an event, it's a process. And this process begins within you. It begins when you stop trying to make others see and finally begin to see yourself, to embrace yourself, to protect yourself. It begins when you understand that you no longer need to seek love where there is only absence, that you no longer need to wait for gestures that don't come, that you no longer need to force connections where silence already screams the end. You are light, and your light needs space to shine. It needs fertile soil. It needs reciprocity. It needs presence. And above all, it needs you, the whole you, the real you, the honest you. When this key turns within, everything changes, because you stop getting lost trying to decipher the mind of others and begin to delve into the wisdom of your own heart. And there, right there, where the hope of being chosen once resided, the courage to choose is born. If these words touched something hidden within you, write in the comments, "I am not a patch, I am whole." This phrase seals your choice, and it's just the beginning. We still have much to reveal. Let's continue this journey together. Maybe you're experiencing exactly this right now. Maybe you're trying to love someone emotionally absent, someone who seems there but at the same time never is, someone who responds to you but doesn't listen, who speaks words but doesn't communicate with their soul, who lingers but doesn't surrender. And you feel the connection that existed, or that you believed existed, fading, dissolving, transforming into a field of silence where only you seem to be trying to keep something alive. You offer your presence. You insist on listening. You try one more conversation, one more gesture, one more chance. And still, the person keeps hiding, remains distant, cold, wrapped in excuses, emotional walls, empty routines. You feel that no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you give, no matter how much you love, this person always seems one step behind, always on the run, always slipping through your fingers. And this leaves its mark. It creates doubts. It slowly transforms you into someone who constantly wonders if the problem is you, if you're demanding too much, if you're demanding something the other person can't give, if you're being emotionally needy, too intense, too difficult to handle. And this doubt is corrosive, because it traps you in a cycle where you blame yourself for feeling, where you diminish yourself to fit in with the shallow affection the other person offers, where you try to justify absences with phrases like, "He's going through a hard time," or "She just needs time." But does time heal what the other person doesn't want to heal? Isn't this difficult moment just a repetition of a pattern that's been going on for years? Aren't you trying to heal someone who doesn't even recognize their hurt? These questions hurt, I know, but they're necessary, because the pain you feel now isn't just about absence, it's about persistence. It's about insisting on something that, deep down, has already shown every sign of not flourishing. It's about continuing to plant in soil that won't let itself be touched. And this, over time, exhausts you. It steals your vital energy. It transforms you into someone who no longer knows what it means to love without fear, without guilt, without losing yourself. Before, you believed you could heal them. You believed your love, your patience, your presence would be enough. That in time they would change. That with more effort, more understanding, more love, they would open their eyes. But now, you're beginning to realize that's not true. That in practice, the more you insist, the further you distance yourself. That your mission is not to save the other from pain they don't even yet recognize, but rather to heal yourself for having insisted so much. To heal that part of you that believed love needed to be earned, deserved, proven. To heal the old wound that confused intensity with value, that confused abandonment with destiny, that believed your pain was just part of the process of loving. But now you begin to see, you begin to feel, you begin to understand that the other person isn't absent by chance. That coldness isn't temporary. That silence isn't a distraction, it's a choice. It's defense. It's escape. And that you, by continuing to try, are also running away from yourself. You're avoiding looking at your own loneliness, your own emptiness, your own pain. Because if you look, it will hurt. It will break. It will expose everything you tried to hide while pouring all your energy into someone who was never really there. But now, at this point in your journey, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer repeat the same silent promises that someday everything will change. Because you've realized, while you wait, you become ill. While you insist, you fade away. While you try to hold on to the other, you lose yourself. And this needs to stop. Not because you've stopped loving, but because you finally started loving yourself. And self-love isn't arrogance. It's spiritual maturity. It's the point where you understand that it's no longer fair to carry the responsibility for a bond that the other doesn't support, that it's no longer fair to continue holding on to something that should be for two. You begin to realize that the healing you sought in others was all along waiting for you within yourself, that what you needed was no longer a gesture of affection, but rather a gesture of courage. Courage to let go, courage to stop, courage to say enough. And this enough doesn't have to be angry. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be silent, serene, sacred, an enough born from the exhaustion of hurting yourself, trying to be whole where there are only fragments. And in that silence you begin to return to yourself, to your story, to your soul, to the pieces left behind while you tried to save someone who hadn't even begun to find themselves. And on that return, you'll be surprised, because little by little you'll realize you no longer needed to wait, no longer needed to beg, no longer needed to prove anything. You just needed to see yourself, accept yourself, embrace yourself. And from that moment on, everything changes. Because love stops being suffering and becomes a choice. And when love is a choice, it doesn't hurt. It liberates, it sustains, it flourishes. If this spoke to your soul, write in the comments, "I stop insisting where there is only absence." This phrase seals your surrender, and we go even deeper together. There is still more light waiting for you on this journey. You're not weak for feeling, and you never were. This idea that vulnerability is weakness was one of the biggest lies you were ever told. You learned to be silent when you wanted to scream, to stand when your soul was already on the ground, to care for others while your wounds bled inside, and yet you continued, with a broken heart but whole in intention, with hope wilted but still sowing, with tired eyes, but always searching for a sign of reciprocity. This is not weakness. This is strength, silent strength. Strength that doesn't flaunt but sustains. Strength that doesn't dominate but cares. The strength of those who feel deeply and, even so, continue. But now you've reached a point in your journey where you begin to realize there's a difference between feeling and sacrificing, that there's a line between loving and losing yourself, and that perhaps you've crossed that line more times than you can count. Because when you love someone who still runs away from themselves, it's easy to forget yourself, easy to prioritize the other, easy to justify absences, accept halves, normalize coldness. You begin to believe that if you hold on just a little longer, understand just a little more, give just a little more, maybe you'll finally be seen. But that maybe becomes a prison. It becomes endless waiting. It becomes self-abandonment. And it is at this moment that the shift in consciousness begins. A silent but steady light begins to shine amidst the chaos. You realize you no longer need to repeat the same cycles, that you are not here to live stories that are not yours, that you no longer need to follow emotional scripts inherited from pain, lack, or the need to prove yourself. Rumi said, "Don't settle for stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend." And that means you can, indeed, begin writing a new chapter, one where you don't beg for presents, one where you don't emotionally mutilate yourself trying to keep a relationship going, one where you choose yourself, with all the wholeness you've always deserved. This awareness doesn't come overnight. It arises slowly, like an inner whisper that begins to question everything. You begin to ask yourself, why do I persist in someone who's never been there? Why do I accept so little from someone I give so much to? Why do I always put myself last and still expect to be a priority? These questions hurt. They tear away the veil of illusions. They reveal what you've tried to hide for so long. But it's only through this pain that lucidity is born. Because suddenly, you understand. You're not here to save anyone. You're here to free yourself. Freeing yourself is not a selfish act. It's a gesture of love. Love for yourself. Love for life. Love for the soul that has cried too much in silence. Freeing yourself means stopping carrying the emotional weight of others as if it were your obligation. It means stopping waiting for others to validate you, recognize you, accept you. It means looking within and saying, "I am enough." And from that point on, everything changes. Because your energy changes. Your outlook changes. Your choices change. You stop being the one who begs and become the one who decides. You stop being the one who waits and become the one who walks. And the journey, which once seemed dependent on others, becomes about you. This shift in consciousness is what separates prolonged suffering from true liberation. Because yes, the pain will continue to exist for a while. There will still be memories. There will still be longing. There will still be parts of you that want to return. But you will have already understood that returning means losing yourself, that reopening that door is locking your own soul again, that insisting on that bond is continuing to erase yourself. And once you see this clearly, there is no more room for pretense. Your conscience no longer allows you to accept less than you deserve, and then you begin to rebuild yourself, piece by piece, gesture by gesture, choice by choice. You begin to say no without guilt, to set boundaries firmly, to listen to your intuition without silencing it for convenience. You begin to care for yourself with a zeal you once offered only to others, and this care becomes healing. It becomes home. It becomes the foundation for a new way of living and loving, one that doesn't require sacrifice but reciprocity, one that doesn't demand absence but presence, one that doesn't make you doubt your worth but reinforces your light. The turning point comes when you understand that you will never again beg for crumbs from someone who doesn't know how to nourish themselves, that you will never again beg for love from someone still at war with their own heart. You stop chasing those who run away and start running toward yourself. You begin to walk firmly on a road where there are no certainties, but there is freedom. And this freedom becomes more important than any company, because it is the space where you find yourself, heal, and expand. The space where you truly begin to live. And even if the other person returns, even if the past knocks on your door with promises and sweet words, you will already be a different person. You will already recognize the pattern. You will already know that there is no real change without true surrender. You will already know that what matters now is not what the other person promises, but what you feel. And what you feel in this new place of consciousness is that peace is worth more than any attachment. That truth is worth more than any illusion. That soulful silence is worth more than empty words. If this shift is happening within you now, write in the comments, "I awaken my own legend." This phrase seals your inner decision. A new cycle is opening, and we continue this journey together. There is still more to be revealed. If you've made it this far, know this: it wasn't by chance. Your soul recognized every word, every silence, every truth that echoed in this video. And this is already the first step in your healing. Now you're no longer trapped in the past. You're awakening. You're returning to yourself. If this message touched you, if you saw something of yourself in each part of this journey, then subscribe to the channel now. Here, each video is a mirror of the soul, a bridge between pain and liberation, and your journey is just beginning. Leave a like if this resonated with you. It shows the universe and YouTube that this message needs to reach more souls like yours. And now, watch the next video that appears on the screen. It is the continuation of your awakening. Because once you begin to find yourself, there is no turning back. The path is forward, and I will walk with you.